All right, traders, we should be good to go here. Great to see all of us here this Monday, June 30th, end of the month, end of the pay period, actually the end of quarter two. Great to see you, Huda and Jeff. We got Anna here, Phil, got Laureen, Debbie, Barbara, Scott, all of our students inside our live trading room, Bill included. Great to see you, sir, as well. And great to have all of us back inside our social streams here, too. At Cyber Trading U, just prominently on YouTube, right down below, just the blue symbol right there. At Cyber Trading U is our handle. Right down below there is that red follow or subscribe button if you're joining us on YouTube, namely. Otherwise, Facebook, LinkedIn, X, Instagram, etc. So, hey, there is a lot to talk about here today, right? I mean, hey, normally there shouldn't be for a Monday, but you open up your platform, you look at your scanners, you see what's moving, what's not moving, and you knew this morning was going to be pretty active. I did just mention a moment ago, it's the end of quarter two. That's actually a pretty good reason why things should be pretty active going into today. Now, normally for a Monday, it should not be as active. Normally, end of the pay period, end of the quarter does not fall on a Monday nor a Friday, nor a Friday. So, just to say that, it's a little weird of a day. Now, to toss things even further into a weird fold here, you get the 4th of July week, right? So it's not just 4th of July day on Friday, but you also have the 3rd. It's a half day. So if you're a market maker out there, big wig out there on Wall Street or anywhere, just, let's say if you are done with today, after end of quarter two, you finish things up, maybe you open up a couple of positions going into the next quarter. Otherwise, you wipe your hands clean. That's pretty much it. You say, let's just focus on family, the holiday, it's warm out, a little barbecue, some hot dogs, jump in the pool a little bit. Right? Isn't Dell on YouTube right now thinking the same thing himself here? Great to see you, Dell, as always. And inside our live trading room, Bill, Yehuda, and Jeff, I'm sure all of us, respectively, are thinking about enjoying some time with family coming up. If not family, then just enjoying the day and the summer. So that's where you don't really set the bar too high on a day like today. Now, of course, BMNR is on the screen here. We're going to talk about this trade to begin because I don't think anyone, certainly not myself nor Fausto, were expecting this to make the type of run that it made across the morning. There was some news that came out. If you were a believer of the news or the company, then you might be more inclined to try and ride the wave. But hey, real quick here, we just said it's a Monday, so you probably don't want to set the bar too high. What time's reversal time for Bill, Kathleen, Anna, Yehuda? What time is reversal time that we typically see most stocks look to fade off, reverse, lose their momentum? It's 10:30, right? 10:30, Eastern, obviously 7:30 Pacific. But just to say there that if you end up jumping into the stock shortly after the market opened up, after the first 5 minutes, mind you, and it ends up running and you get out around 10:15 Eastern, even 10:30 perhaps, then that's a really strong trade, right? You should feel proud of yourself for doing that. Just not just on a high flying, crazy moving low float stock like this, but just for a Monday going into a holiday week. Let's put things in perspective, right? Because it's so easy to beat ourselves up and it's very easy to say, oh, I should have held on longer. Oh, I got out too soon. Oh, I did this or that. Okay, well, we have to just put this in a certain perspective where we normally don't see stocks up 400+%, right? So if you're the type of trader that says, "Oh, well, how do I get out exactly at that top? Oh, how do I get 400% move?" Your head's in the wrong space. And that's not to be an insult. That's just to be very truthful. That's just meant to be, Josh, I'm trying to show you here as the instructor, what happens not more often than not, but less often here. So this is not something that happens as frequent. Before we even go further on BMNR, you remember WFF? Because if you don't remember WFF heading into the week here, just remember what happened from Friday. This is one of the craziest charts that I've ever seen heading into the end of the afternoon. And it's just to mention that this ended up running up beautifully across the morning into the early afternoon. Ooh, oh my God, it moved up as high as $29. How do I hold on as high as that? I'm not trying to play that game. I'm not in that business. I don't mind leaving money on the table. You know what I say if you leave money on the table? It means that at least you took some money off the table to begin, right? If you're complaining about, oh, I left money on the table, it means that you're actually taking money off the table, right? So that's where we could ask, where were the best levels? And for a stock like this, point being is just that you don't want to get stuck on the way down. I'd rather leave money on the table than try and be Mr. or Mrs. Perfectionist. And here on the way down, I am Mr. But just to say, pull back on the way down, I don't want to be a part of that. Going back to the BMNR, was it? Yeah, BMNR. All right, well, look at it now. This thing is puking on the way down here now. It looks like it kind of just broke below a bit of consolidation it just built prior. That's not good. Now, real quick, just without anyone actually, looking and checking, I'm just, playing a quick little game with you here, folks, right? Ishan, Debbie, Lee, and Scott, all of us. Just play a quick game with me, right? Just a small little game. Just really quick. I want everyone to answer lightning round answer right now. What's the float of this stock? If you were to take a guess, what's the float of this stock? Meaning the number of shares outstanding minus those held by the insiders, institutions. If you're familiar with what the float is, then certainly you could take a stab in the dark and guess what's the float on this stock. Just take a real quick stab in the dark, folks. What do you got? Shout a number here to me in the chat. Shout a number in the chat to me. What do we got? One of us said 12 right now on the side. One of us on YouTube, I see 6. I see one of us saying 100. That's a little too high there, I think. So for most stocks that make this, 200, 300, 400 plus percent move, you don't really see a float any higher than 50 million, 30 million shares. It's more rare that happens. So what I want to do is just do a little comparison of float for reference. The float, the number of shares outstanding minus those held by insiders and institutions. We'll start on SoFi, then we'll bounce back to the BMNR just for reference. So SoFi, we all know SoFi. If you don't know SoFi as a stock trade, you know it as a company. The loan company, SoFi Stadium, you know the name SoFi. It's a well-known blue chip company, in my opinion. Give me a second here. I got a bunch of shit up on the screen. 1 second. I'll tell you what Josh the trader did this morning. I'll get into what I did, but speaking selflessly here, going into SoFi, the float on this stock is about 1.09 billion shares in the float. This stock is a blue chip stock that everyone knows about as a company. Well, what's the float of that BMNR? It's about 4.9. That's not a B, that's an M. So 4.95 million shares in the float. That's really tiny. That's really low. That's a low float stock. So let's actually show this here if I can on TradeStation. Get the scanner feature up here. There we go. All right. So BMNR, technically TradeStation's trying to tell me this is like a 2 million share float. BMNR is. What does that mean? It means that it's something that you can't trust as far as you could throw. It means that it's better to take the money and run than to try and be the perfectionist on the way out, because you're playing a dangerous game of musical chairs. When the music stops, you damn well better find your seat, because if you can't find your seat in time, well, BMNR may as well end up becoming a WFF. You have no idea. I have no idea, right? You have no idea. I have no idea. That's what I'm telling you. I don't want to be a part of that game, a game that I don't know too much of. Rob on YouTube right now asking, great to have you just joining us, Rob, saying, what about taking profits too quickly all the time? Well, that is a separate instance, so we're going to get to that, right? Because where I just mentioned earlier, it's easy to beat ourselves up as traders. So let's discuss BMNR. Let's now dig into the semantics behind this trade, why this made the move that it made. I always say that in this workshop, it's a case-by-case situation, meaning trade by trade we go through. Now, if you in a coaching session, one-on-one with me, privately on the side, or in our classes, we address this as a group otherwise. If we discuss the fact that there's something happening in your own trading, that you're taking too big losses otherwise, maybe that you've experienced way too big losses frequently where you're getting out too quickly on a lot of good trades. That happens. That happens to a lot of our students joining us on the trading floor right now in our room. That's where, we'll discuss that further, but let's go into it here. And that's where I'll at least shed more light on it, because the way that I treat that situation, Rob, the way that I treat that problem is very similar to what we discuss each and every week here. For instance, we just went over reversal time. So leaving money on the table after you get out here is a non-issue to me. because it was already up so much to begin. And if you were in from earlier, just anywhere here, it's flying on up. You're up like 7, 8, maybe even 10 points a share. All right, take the money and run if you want. But, hey, if it ends up pushing up higher, maybe there could be room for more. Maybe there could be another entry. And I'll offer that up as maybe, possibly. I don't know. Maybe there won't be. Maybe there is not a level that matches what we identify as an entry, as we discussed here. So let's dig into it. You see a couple lines on my screen here to begin. I plotted these lines here well before the market opened up, like around 9:10, 9:15 Eastern. I started to plot my levels, and these two I mainly focused on. Now, for a stock like this, let's say like BMNR, this had a huge pop from 6 up to like, I don't know, what is this, $15.41? Well, think about it like the US dollar bills. US dollar bills, US currency. Again, not to be the smart guy or smart gal in the room here, let's exclude the $2 bill, the ever so rare $2 bill. We have our $1 bill first, right? So meaning, $6, $7, $8. Well, what's our next US dollar bill after the one then? What's our next US dollar bill after the one? What do we got here? Mike, Kathleen, Laureen, Debbie, Sharon, all saying 5, right? Get that Abraham Lincoln out there. So, that's where I focus on $5. All right, well, it's nowhere near 5. All right, well, after that, I'll focus on 10, which I did not have a line here for, and I'll show you why I didn't have a line here. But normally, that's a strong level. Now, after 10, what's our next $5 incremental? What's our next $5 level after 10? Right? Simple math on this one, right? 10 plus 5, 15, right? So that would be the next, level to watch here at least. That's something I would focus on as resistance as it tries to look to break higher. These are all assumed levels to work off of to begin. We need our confirmation, though. We need to have Bookmap tell us where the icebergs really are. But at least to begin, if you're focused on any set of levels, I would at least start on your 5s and 10s. 10, 15, 20, etc., 25, 30, maybe even. Now, you can't just only assume on that. Let's see where the levels really are. This is not BMNR. So let's jump to BMNR. That's SMCI. I'll get to Super Micro in a little bit. That's what I traded earlier on today. Bought option calls on it. We'll get into that just in a moment. But let's go into the BMNR here. All right, so this popped just a little bit before Fausto started the morning meeting at 9 o'clock. So it's a pretty fresh trade heading into the opening bell. At least by 9:15 in the morning. Let's just show from 8:50 in the morning going into 9:15 in the morning when I started to plot those lines. Well, you tell me. Can you tell me, folks, what two price levels have the largest amount of volume traded off of it in this picture? Notice how I phrased that question. What two price levels have the largest amount of volume already traded off of it? Reginald, shout out to Reginald on YouTube right now as everyone else looks to answer my question just there. Reginald asking, would you look at an exit on high to highest volume? Short answer, yes. Short answer, yes. I'll get to that in just a bit there. Yeah, that could definitely be a point of reversal or a point maybe where there's going to be more room for the stock to run. So we'll get into that question in just a bit. Very good question there from Reginald on YouTube. Reginald saying 13 and 14. A lot of us inside our live trading room saying 12 and 13. 12 and 13. Where are you looking for that answer, folks? Kevin, Joyce, Mike, and Scott. Where are you looking for that answer to say 12 and 13? All of us there saying the CVP column. The CVP column, plural. And I'll explain why I'm showing a second one here in a bit. Pretty straightforward if you're just looking at bars and numbers, right? But looking at the bars first, largest spike in this consolidation and this chart as a whole is at 12. It's just $12 there. And then 13, next largest peak right here. Now, looking into the numbers, how much volume in total was being traded at those prices? Well, at $13, we'll start with 104,000. 104,263 roughly at that price. Now that's just from consolidation, from up and down movement on the chart. Well, looking at this picture, folks, simple question, just so I know everyone's awake and no one's sleeping behind the desktop. What's the direction of this chart as it's, going from left to right? What's the direction? Up, right? So simply put, I'm assuming that there is a larger amount of buying pressure as this is going up. I assume that there's a larger amount of buying pressure off of 13. I don't, maybe not all of the 104,263 is buying, but I'm assuming a good chunk of it is. I'm sure not all of the 158,562 shares that were traded at 12 bucks is all buying, but I'm assuming a good chunk is. Okay. Well, once this breaks above resistance and it runs from it, I'm looking for resistance to become support. So especially after it makes this initial move here, it goes up as high as nearly 15 bucks. I think it popped 15 or tested that 15 level there, speaking of $5 prices. So that looked pretty good initially. Well, perhaps I'm looking to see support hold at 13. Otherwise, I wanted 12. Personally, I was sinking my teeth this morning right into $12. If this were to have made a drop down to 12, broke under, over, I was going to take that trade this morning, and I'll show you what happened, why I say it that way, of course. But going into the open, it looks like even in pre-market here, it tries to build a 13. Like this is 9:15 in the morning. I'm not jumping into anything here. I normally never trade anything going into the opening bell. You want to give yourself time to, breathe and relax. You want to give the stock that just made this elaborate run up a chance to breathe and relax. So don't trade the stuff. But after the open, I was ready to jump in off of 12. So I was very patient here at first and, moved up as high as 16. Looks like 16 became a pretty good level to rely on here. So uniquely as its own, it's not a $5 price, but $16 is a key level here in this case, given that we had an iceberg get tested here after the open. And then again, just another 22,000 shares show up there. So, in terms of the heat map, I like this as a big point of resistance now. I didn't earlier, I do now. So the issue for me, though, is Josh, the trader, was, I just didn't get my entry. I didn't get what I wanted here. So it broke down, but not enough down to 12. Didn't go into 12, didn't cut under over. So I missed it. It's all right. Moved up without me. Now, what happened on this trade was simply the fact that the more times it keeps pecking and testing 16 as resistance, the more buying pressure that we're seeing here, evidently, we're going to get a run. So I missed it from 12. If you got in from 13, that was the better level in hindsight. 13, not 12. So if you took it, great. Now, that's where I'll just mention here. If you're in from 13, it's currently 9:58 in the morning at this point where my cursor is. If you got in at 13. All right, well, reversal time at 10:30. So if you get out around 17:50, if you get out around 17, if you get out at 18, 18:50, anywhere in that range, that's an incredible trade from 13, right? I mean, hey, on the flip side, allow me to ask anyone on YouTube, anyone on social media want to challenge me on that? Anyone inside our live trading room right now want to challenge me on that statement that if you get in from 13 and out at 17, 17:50, 18, that's not a good trade? Can anyone give me an argument on that? Because that's where I'll ask on the flip side, hey, for this stock, I know it made a bigger move later on, made a larger run up. Let me ask Joyce, Yehuda, Kevin, Mike, our students first, though, Sharon. I know that you're joining us from the past week. I hope that you're enjoying your time. Let's ask our students that have been with us for a good amount of time. For a $15 stock, how often have you made $3 to $4 per share on a trade for a $15 stock? I'm not talking for Palantir. I'm talking about a $15 stock. Not talking about NVIDIA, not talking about Coinbase, not talking about MicroStrategy, not talking about Hood, not talking about HIMS, not talking about HERS. I'm kidding. Same company. But just to say, though, all of us inside our live trading room, our students that have been with us for weeks, months, if not years, not often. Guess what? Because it doesn't happen as often, right? So, point being, if you get out there, that's a hell of a trade. That's incredible if you were to get in from 13 and then out around here because you're getting out, in lieu of reversal time. Did it go up higher? Yeah, but that's where you could try and reposition yourself, possibly. Now, if you're in from 16, that's where the more times it keeps testing 16, there's room for an entry. The more times that it is nipping and testing this resistance in a smaller window of time, I'll feel better when in a smaller window of time. So now let's jump to 16 on this. Notice when I break out my rectangles, my artwork here, see if I can get this nice. Notice the time from the first test at 16, 9:37 in the morning, to this test and break of 16 here. It's about 30, 40 minutes. It's about, 40 minutes, 30 minutes roughly. I still don't have enough coffee in my system right now. Well, the point being is that the time difference from this test to this test is a lot smaller. And that's a good sign. That's what you're looking for. So, at least heading into the mid morning, I'm a lot more patient waiting for my retests of resistance. The more times it looks to try and nip and test that level, I'm looking for that entry. I'll look to take that breakout on resistance. Now, if I miss the breakout on resistance and it starts to run without me, this moved up $1.35 off of 16. This looks tiny in nature of the move here on this chart, but let's not discount it. It's a freaking $1.35 move up. That's a big break of resistance. Let's see if resistance can become support. If you miss the breakout of resistance, you're looking for that to happen in order to see a higher high later. Now, I'm going to answer some questions here in just a moment inside our trading room in just a bit. I just want to show one comment though, because in terms of setups, in terms of levels and what to look for, again, we're going to go through all chat. I see everything here in just a bit, folks. Genevieve, Sean, I think I saw one from Michael there in just a bit. Real quick, what's our next $5 level after this looks to move up off of 16? When this breaks above $16, what's our next incremental level? $5 incremental. We were already above 15, right? We were already over 15 at that point. And then after 15 is what? A lot of us in our trading rooms saying 20, right? Now, in my mind, I was thinking as long as this can break over 16, I'm thinking our next major level, our next huge level of resistance here is to be at 20. And at 10:28 in the morning, I kind of gave the game plan out there to you. Now, notice the number I wrote. I certainly didn't expect for this to go up to any further above 20, let alone 25, let alone maybe even 30 soon enough. But just it's to say that for BMNR, if this could hold over that big iceberg level, if this could hold over this $16 level that showed early in the morning on Bookmap, if it could flip that into a support, then I'm looking for a move up higher towards 20. That was my game plan to you right there in the trading room. Now, easy to say in hindsight, that's what happens. But again, I'm not looking to be a perfectionist trader. How often am I, Josh the trader, up, $4, $3.50, $4 a share on a stock that is $15, $16 per share, in price? Not that often. So, I have no problem setting up a game plan to scale out or get out of most, if not all, of my position underneath that 20. If you want to keep a small position remaining open just for some responsible fun, if you've already made your day's pay, if you've already made enough money to at least satisfy you, if not your day's pay, then you could always have some responsible fun. If you want to hold on longer, then ride the wave, as long as you can. And if it starts crashing on the way down, then hey, you've already made your money. Who cares if you're stuck in a down halt on tiny size remaining? If you've already clocked out 2/3 or half of your trade, and again, if you've already done your homework, you can go outside and play. So those are things I'll always mention to anyone here. Like, I come from the instructing side and the teaching side. And obviously a lot of our students come from the side of, hey, I don't want to lose my shirt. So that's our big point of focus when we do these trade reviews. But of course, hey, if you've already done your homework and if you've already made enough money to satisfy yourself, then you could always try and ride the wave and just have fun. Okay, maybe it could break over 25. If it could break over 25 and flip that into a support next, ooh, maybe, right? It's possible. Then eventually the balloon bursted on this trade temporarily here, so failed to hold over support around that 25, loosely speaking, crashed down to 20. We got an iceberg on the bid now at 18. It's possible this could try and move up higher later on. But point being is just for the BMNR trade, there were a couple of levels for you to try and take this trade from. I wanted 12, didn't get it. If you were looking for 13, you could have gotten it from there. You could have gotten it from 15 also. You could have. But otherwise, 16 was the better price to focus on in terms of the heat map, in terms of what was out there on the order book. This ended up acting as support, and then it moved up higher. Okay, let's go through some chat right now because I want to just go through any questions or comments that came in live from our trading room first. Yeah, Sharon, we've been on this BMNR stock just on the screen there. If you can't see the screen being shown, just do a log out, log back in. Probably just a quick little glitch from your side there or just our software, but you should be good. Genevieve says, not in just a few hours in the morning. Tim says, how do you handle your stops? So the stop part we can go into here. I'll go into my own trade from this morning. I jumped into SMCI, did option calls on that. So I'll show you my trade there at least. And right now I'm in on a couple trades right now. I have my stops still set and active for. I'm still actually surprisingly in on GameStop. That's nice. But point being for BMNR, setting stops. You can't trade big shares on this stock. I don't care who you are. Like, you just don't do normal size because it's going to be easier to manage your stops. If you're going down the double black diamond, you want to be as protective as you can, at least to make sure that you don't break any bones, right? When it comes down to a category 5 stock, you don't want to really trade big size because you could still make big money on smaller shares here for this trade. Even on 100 shares, making 4 points, 5 points a share, that's half a day's pay, nearly or at least half of a day's pay. So that feels pretty good. At least on 100 shares compared to 500 or 1,000. You can manage the trade a lot better because remember, once the balloon does burst, this thing is going to drop like a freaking rock. I can go through the whole graveyard of pop and drop trades from this past month. Here we are at the end of the calendar month here in June. I can go through damn near every stock, folks, that we traded in June. You know that the balloon eventually bursted. MCTR, just to start off on that one. I know Fausto did SBET. Go through them all, right? Save us some time at least. But it's just to say for BMNR, same thing will easily happen here at some point. So that's just where, hey, I'd rather trade small size knowing that I don't control the eventual timing or moment when this stock eventually craps out the other way. What happens if you get out and you make money on 1,000 shares? You feel really good. And then it runs up more. It's like, shoot, it ran up higher without me. Oh, let me jump back in. And then you jump in. And then that's the moment where it tanks. And it's not only very fast to get out, but it makes you start thinking, oh, shit, now I need to average down. Oh, I got to add another 1,000. And then when you add the next 1,000, that's when it drops even faster. Right? I know that you've been there, and I've been there too. We've all been there. So let's not be there any further. Let's try not to be there anymore. That's where, for a stock like BMNR, small shares can still win you a big prize. Now, to answer the question in full of where to set the stop, let's say off of 16 at least, right? I would have to make sure that my stop is set likely off of like these lows to begin, 1, 2. I wouldn't want to set it any further because these are pretty deep. So I would probably want to find a couple of wicks on the chart that would be relatively close to 16. And it's tough. There aren't really any. So that's where I'm kind of just looking at those two that kind of built out. It's just the 1 minute chart. It's very tiny. I don't really like using this as strong evidence, but these two wicks down here, I would need to hope and pray, at least on a breakout over 16, for that to become like the baseline. And it does for a good amount of time. There's like one wick here that's a little controversial, we'll say, but otherwise it does a pretty good job building out from there, Rob, and it ends up moving up a little bit higher. That was for Rob, and then also Tim inside our live trading room. Now I'll go to my SMCI trade in just a bit here because it's a little bit easier, a little bit more tame of a stock. Not to say that was category one. That was probably a 3 or maybe even a 4. So you don't need to trade the shiny object in the room to make money. Uh, we'll keep going through some chat here in just a moment, and then I'll just discuss a little bit about my situation, because my personal situation today and from the end of last week, it plays perfectly into what I just said. We don't need to trade the shiny object in the room to make our day's pay. So Yehuda says, from Fausto, no trader buys at the lows and sells at the highs, at least all the time. The thing is, Yehuda, all the time. If you do here and there, it could be skill, and sometimes it's just flat out luck. Sometimes it's flat out luck. But no trader always buys at the lows and always sells at the highs. They're like, lying if they say they do. Genevieve says, I really love how you teach repositioning. It's allowed me to take a profit on the start of my trade and not worry about losing early gains. Then if I go in again, it's a whole different scenario. Well, again, just going into this one, there's higher risk already on this trade with it up as much as it is, with it being as low float of a stock as it is. So let's say if you get out around 20 and it pops higher, quite frankly, if there's a great support I could use, great. In hindsight, it does look like this wicked down to $20 as support. That's actually crazy. It actually pulled back, made my famed under and over on this singular candle, and then wicked back up. That's nice. That's like crazy how strong that was. But just this is a tougher stock to get back into. Me, Fausto, the world's greatest trader, whomever he or she may be, they will have to say the same thing. They can't disagree with that statement. So if you miss it, then it's okay. You can't beat yourself up because it's already volatile to begin with. Then it's an even more risky environment with it up as more now. Scott got in and out on paper. He's just trying to learn, and from like 15-ish out underneath 20. The admission, he rode to the top to see what it was going to do. He saw a big iceberg at $30. Thought it might try and break out. He wanted to see, but then a copious amount of notes on support resistance. Love that Scott. Scott's had his nose right into the book in terms of our classes, and he's in all sorts of other classes and programs, certification classes, AI, and all that good stuff, right? Let's see what else. Anything I missed here from Scott? Following up from Scott there, he says, second question, in your experience, as it's crawling back now, it's consolidating. Would you say it is done? Spreads remain insane. Yeah, I mean, well, it's a 1 million to 5 million share float stock running 73 million share total on the day today. That's extremely excessive. It's already up 400+%. It was up probably like 500 at this point when it was at $28 plus. So you're definitely more at the casino if you're looking for a move up higher on this. That's not a bad thing if you're trading tiny size. If you've already made a boatload of money on this trade and you're playing with house money, that's not a bad thing. If you're a brand new student who still finds this all very confusing, do not be trading the stock. That's like the best advice I can give to you here in this situation, because it's already tough to manage in terms of what happens if you're there, right place, wrong time. We got some iceberg orders here at $24, $25. This one's been out here since almost an hour, about 55 minutes or so. But for the time being, yeah, wait to try and see that flip back into support before there's any further movement. You always want to see a resistance flip into support if you're looking for a higher high. Like now, at this point, it's holding well below that 25 level. So the more it can needle that level, nip and test that level throughout the day, then there's better chance for that breakout. Actually, before I go to SMCI, let's just jump to Josh the Trader here, if you don't mind, because I want to show you what I did today. All right, so my situation goes as follows. Not as if you care about my life. I don't either. No, I'm kidding. Just to say, I'm self-deprecating. Just to say that, I'm in New York visiting family. I do care about my life. My students, I don't want anything at all. Of course, that was me being sarcastic and quick. Just to say, of course, I'm in New York. I'm with family. Just played with my lovely nieces last night. It was one of my niece's birthdays. Shout out to Hannah. But I'm in New York. I'm on one desktop or a laptop actually. I got a little side monitor here. I am not in my trading element, and I know that. I am not in my normal spot. So I'm not going to be as aggressive. I'm not going to be as assertive. So for that reason, I did not trade BMNR myself. I won at 12. I was looking to take that trade. But if you were asking, well, why didn't you get in at 16? It's because I was focused on other stocks that were at least a little tiny notch less tame or less volatile than this. A little bit more tame, I should say. So let's go into PLTR to begin. It's starting to like shake around a bit right now, but PLTR had a pretty good setup going into the mid morning here prior to Traders Talk beginning. I ended up jumping in a little bit before it broke over 138. So let me actually show this to you here in terms of the setup and the retest of resistance. Let's just jump right to trading view. Trading view. Because it shows on this graph, because I'm actually testing a couple things out with indicators, back testing some stuff. I'm not prepared or ready to show you the whole product yet. I'm showing a couple of us selectively in the coaching sessions I've been doing the last week or two. But point being, for all my students here, everyone, Bill, Barbara, Sean, Chuck, all of us just here, do you see my cursor? It's, where these little plus marks are on the chart, horizontal plus marks on this graph. Some are red, some are green, right? The little plus marks. See that there? All right, cool. So I actually found an indicator on TradingView. If you know TradingView, if you use TradingView, it's a good website for charting. I use it to play around with stuff here and there. So, not a necessity. This is just something I'm showing because I've had students ask me in the past, hey, Josh, is there an indicator for TradeStation for your platform that you can plot the opening and the closing prints, right? Those big block transactions from the time and sales. Well, guess what this is actually? I found an indicator on TradingView. Open, close, daily line. That's the indicator right here. It's on TradingView. It's free. Open, close, daily line. So it actually plots yesterday's or the prior trading day's closing price plus the opening bell print, wherever it is, just for the morning. So, this at least is the opening print from today. Oh, you know what? Sorry. For my students inside the live trading room, I'm going to just correct myself here. So earlier inside the chat board, I wrote to you that PLTR is breaking over Friday's closing price. So that's actually on me. This was actually this morning's opening price. And I did a quick little look back. I just, when you saw Palantir's drop yet on Friday, this was actually 10 minutes before the close. So I thought this line was perfect in sync with the drop. I thought this was the after hours and not 10 minutes prior to the close. So no point being to our students, little just correction. This is actually the opening price from today, not the closing from Friday. Same point of the setup stands where the more times it's nipping and testing that as a resistance, there's a case for a push up. There's a case for a break above resistance. So I jumped into PLTU. It's the ETF for Palantir. And I jumped in once it ended up retesting and breaking resistance prior to us beginning this workshop. If it pulls back, I might get stopped out, break even, because I took the ETF. I did the ETF on it, not PLTR. But point being is that on this, I ended up setting my stop pretty shortly below where it was trading at right before I jumped in, because it trades synonymous with the stock. So as long as the stock price contains, and as long as PLTR breaks higher, flips that into support, this is $138 here. So going back to Bookmap now, at least $138. This was your iceberg resistance as well from earlier. So I definitely needed to see this get broken over first. I kind of jumped the gun because I was more focused on the open price, right? I was focused on 137.80 on Palantir. Perhaps I could have waited for 138 because that strategically would have been better in terms of momentum. But point being, it worked out. And now at this point, I moved my stop up to break even on that trade. So once I set my stop and the stock was starting to move up a little bit more, after that point, I moved my stop up higher. One of the quick ways I can teach risk management, because I do a whole class on it in phase two, actually coming up for next month in the July phase two stock course. We're going to restart our curriculum right from the very top again. So, lessons one, two, three, four, and lesson two of the phase two curriculum. I do a whole class setting stops, taking profits. So you'll go through it with me there in full for over 60 minutes. Reginald, really quick on YouTube. Appreciate you joining us, Reginald. Hope to see us in hope to see you inside our live trading room soon enough. There, open invite always to not just Reginald, but any of our members on social today. Double black diamond going downhill. Great description. Sounds like my usual trades. Usually me covered in snow. Well, definitely want to have you join us inside our room, Reginald, to have you continue learning our strategy, especially with risk management. Part of trading is finding stocks that are tradable. So that BMNR is the shiny object in the room. I typically start off on something like this because it's something a lot of our members in our room are talking about. We had this on our list. But hey, before you go down the double black diamond, you at least want to start off on the bunny slopes, right? So, something like NFE, even here this morning, slower stock, obviously cheaper, but something with a little bit more with a little less volatility and a little bit more volume, better order book, better spread, good tiers here on the market depth window. These are all things that we teach basically, but otherwise, yeah. I mean, hey, you got to learn to go down the bunny slopes first before the double black diamond. Now, the way that I'll teach risk management otherwise, Reginald, maybe you could answer this for me as well on YouTube, as well as Rob, as well as Dell. I got a bunch of us actually on YouTube this afternoon. Welcome aboard. And anyone here a golf fan? Anyone here a golf fan, aficionado, player? There is nobody, and I mean nobody, that knows how to shank a ball better than me. Any golf fans out here? Actually, the second to most recent time I went to a driving range, actually, and this is a true story. I kid you not. Probably one of the most embarrassing stories in my life. I brought my friend's dad's driver because he gifted me a lefty driver, going down to Florida, moving down there and whatnot. So I go to this driving range. I plop like two balls down. I hit one. The second one, I snapped the head of the driver. The head went about like 60 to 70 yards down, and probably about like 60 to 70 people were just staring me, staring a black hole through my head. Oh, it was crazy. I picked up my balls and left immediately. It wasn't too fun. Now, for any of my golf fans out here, Bob, Tim, Sharon, Laureen, Debbie Ann, Ishan, all of us just joining us here, and if you're on YouTube, let me ask you, if you go par on one hole in a round of golf, if you go par on one hole, is that good? Is that bad? What do you think? That's all I'm asking. Just on one hole in golf, if you go par, is that good? Is that bad? Laureen says not great, but a lot of us here are saying good. Scott says break even. Sharon says birdie is better. Perhaps. But for one hole, par is certainly not bad at all. So, point being, if you jump into a trade and it starts working out okay, it's starting to move a little bit, but it's not giving you that big move shortly after, then I don't mind going par on that hole in golf, because it's better to go par than it is to go triple bogey. And at least going back to this crazy monstrosity of a trade from Friday afternoon, it was, this is nuts. This is one of the craziest charts, obviously, I could ever show you. So most charts don't end up like this. But point being is that you don't want to get stuck going triple bogey, or even something where it's difficult for you to, get out of the trade. You should look for a pretty good reaction shortly after you jump in the move. So for Palantir, going back to my PLTU, PLTR. Okay, well, shortly after I jumped in the trade, the stock started off to react pretty good, and it didn't take me out. So I've been in the trade since. Is it going to run up higher later for me? That I can't answer. But point being is that the trade started good, and now I moved my stop up to at least go par, worst case scenario. Um, GameStop, I'm in right now as a trade. I'd called that out even from last week. I got taken out break even, par, on a swing trade I was in from last week, pulled back. So maybe that was right place, wrong time. And just before, actually, inside our live trading room, I jumped into this trade. I ended up setting my stop at 23.70, and it hasn't taken me out yet. It hasn't taken me out yet. So over time, I will be moving my stop up higher. Hey, when we're driving down the road, when we're on the expressway, I'm going through the greatest hits right now for all of our students, but all my catchphrases. But if you're going down the expressway, I'm sure that your seatbelt's not loose. I'm sure that your seatbelt's set pretty tight, right? When you get into an accident, I'm sure that if you have a loose seatbelt, it's not going to help you out too much. So I started off with a pretty tight seatbelt to begin, and then it's only going to be tighter at this stage because if it's going to work out, then we should likely see this try and go back up to 24. We should likely try and see this break over 24 and keep moving up higher later. My game plan specifically on this one stock is, hey, I have a gap fill here. So I think that there's a good case for GameStop, at least as a day trade, if not a 1 or 2 day swing, possibly to see this fill a good portion of this gap, maybe up towards 25, 26 area here, based out as support. That could very well be a resistance. Otherwise, maybe even much higher. But, it looks interesting. Now, what if it doesn't make that move? Then I'm not in the business of just like babysitting this stock go sideways or move back down when there's other stocks moving not just like faster or more, but just a more efficient move, something with as good liquidity that's moving even better. I want to focus my time and attention on something like that. So, hey, I'll move my stop up. And if this doesn't make that elaborate big move shortly after, like we always teach, not only in our classes, but obviously here in Traders Talk, you hear me say that pretty much every week, right? If it's not making that big move shortly after, then I don't really care too much. I've already made my money from the morning, from SMCI, from the Palantir. If this ends up not continuing, then I'll find other stocks that are continuing. Kind of going in reverse order a little bit here, aren't I? So SMCI was the first stock I ended up trading this morning, at least earlier today. Jumped into option calls. I've been back testing a strategy, at least more indicator heavy for my options trading, because my attention and focus is so much here inside our live trading room, and quite frankly, on Bookmap for icebergs. And if I'm trying to trade the large cap stocks just with option calls, I want to do that. Like I like that. I see like good value in like putting small amount of money into an options account and just having some fun with that as long as you know what you're doing. So for the stocks that I'm trading, they're not really too heavy on the implied volatility side. I mean, maybe a couple contracts could be depending on the day of the week. This week could be tricky because you got the half day Thursday plus the day off Friday. So yeah, it's gonna be tougher with expiration cut short today or this week. But SMCI was a nice move. Now on this one trade, I ended up jumping in. It was right around 941, 942. So after I jumped in, I was making sure that this wasn't really, breaking much lower. I gave it a few candles, a few bars, and I was basically saying to myself with the SMCI stock, again, I did option calls. I did $49 strike price option calls for just, I think it was the July 3rd expiration just for this week. Here's my SMCI. Now on Bookmap, we have the opening print, the opening bell print right here. And on, trading view, that little indicator I kind of just showed, I'll just show that there again. But it broke over this 399, nearly a 400,000 share transaction at 48.69. It broke over it right here shortly after the first 5 minutes. It broke above it, ran up about 50 cents, nearly 50 cents. It broke over that level and ran pretty well. All right, well, resistance looked to become support, right? So not only did I have the opening print here to try and be support, but I also had the VWAP. VWAP is pretty much right there too. hovering right at it, over it, and combination of the two together created a strong enough support for us here heading into like 9:45 time. I jumped in a couple candles prior, and I dealt with a small little shake here, but moved back up pretty nicely. So this is where I'll tell you, I don't need to be perfect with my exit. I just want to take enough meat off the bone to fill me up, to make me feel good about the trade that I jumped into. So when I jump in at the time, 9:45, 9:42, 9:43, 9:45, my contract price was at $1.40. I think like $1.35, $1.40 was my price on the contracts. So when it's 9:45 in the morning, I'm thinking, hey, I got a few more minutes until reversal time, don't I? If reversal time's at 10:15, 10:30, I got about 30, 45 minutes to try and work this out, right? Just went par. There we go. PLTU. Now, it's just to say, though, here for this trade, this started off pretty shaky, but then it started to push back up, broke back over 49, which is a whole number level. So I was watching that, making sure that this can contain, generally speaking, over 49. All right, kept going up a little bit higher. Now, let me show you bookmap next, though, because this is what we focused on as our game plan for resistance. Where is our dark orange line on this heat map here? On the heat map, on book map that I'm showing you, where do we have our dark orange line? 50, right? And where do we have an orange or somewhat orange line below 50? 49.90, right? Right at 49.90, there's a yellowish orangish line, not as big or bold as what's at $50. So in terms of the numbers, the size, this is nearly 300,000 shares. This is just over 100,000 shares. Well, guess what? They're only 10 pennies apart, so that is pretty close knit to each other. Let's just add them together there as resistance. $49.90 and $50 together as a working resistance area. Now, once this moved up towards that area, I didn't really want to take too many risks because it's still a Monday. We're in a holiday week. Remember, you can't really think Captain Hindsight all the time and like try and be the perfectionist trader. So right when it was starting to get to 10:15, I scaled out the first, I think it was even 2/3 my trade. It was about 6 contracts. I took 4 out. And then the second half, I took just the rest out. Yeah, I think even here, just as it was like moving up a little higher. I didn't want to mess with 1030. Didn't want to mess with this wiping back down below $50. So in hindsight, what happens? Well, it actually pushed up a little bit more, moved up as high as 50.50, and then came back down. It broke below the VWAP here. What's happened since? Actually, a lot of time has gone by. So since we did this workshop, yeah, this thing's been a hot mess since. It's just been very range bound, shaky. It's under the VWAP. It's under that resistance. So do I feel happy with where I got out? You betcha. I don't care about leaving money on the table because every trade begins with the entry and every entry begins with a big level. And once I jumped in, once the stock broke through a big level, well, I was looking for a pretty good reaction, a big move. So that's all I'm looking for. This to me, generally speaking, is a pretty big move. So between that plus 10:30 reversal time area, generally speaking, give or take 15 minutes, just feel good with taking the money. That's all. All right, folks, real quick before we finish up, Rich, one of our gold students, Rich, joining us on YouTube today. Appreciate you joining us on YouTube, Rich. Look forward to having you back in our room and work with you in coaching. I was a 2 handicap. I quit with back. Jeez. You gotta give me some lessons there, Rich. We'll exchange trading and golf lessons. Depends on the hole. All right, what do we got here from our live trading room before we finish up? Roberto, for the GameStop trade, what was the reason to buy it? Gap fill. This was a trade from, okay, so I'll give a little light on insight on GameStop before we finish. So first things first, GameStop. From a charting standpoint, gap fill. This is a fat gap. And I'm thinking a good chunk of it just will over time get filled. Now, I didn't have this on the forefront of my mind on day one here where this crashed. It popped up maybe Thursday last week, Wednesday last week. I know that when I was in the air on Thursday, I ended up jumping in on a swing trade, then I got stopped out. So more or less just Wednesday into Thursday, we started talking about it because it was starting to squeak back up here. And I noticed the gap and it smacked me upside the head. I was like, oh, I like what I see. Uh, Now, though, Fausto was a fan of this stock going into mid to end of May. So he got out on this well before this had happened. But we've been talking about GameStop as a potential swing trade, not only from then, but I even have a YouTube video out. If you're joining us on YouTube, I have a video out from mid to end December talking about the potential, month of a squeeze up on GameStop. Started off good, but it didn't give us what we wanted at the end of it. Came back down, and we knew that. But then same thing happened basically here. Think they ended up doing an offering, a direct offering, common stock offering. I know they did something with Bitcoin where they bought a shit ton of Bitcoin, like $500 million worth. I personally like that news. That doesn't that's not like necessary validation or reason for you to take the trade. Personally, I'm a crypto guy, so like I like hearing that type of investment from a company. And if Bitcoin continues to break all-time highs throughout this year, then I'm assuming this gap will at least be filled to a good extent. But even outside of the Bitcoin stuff, from a charting standpoint, I still expect a good chunk of this gap to over time get filled. Support become resistance, maybe. I don't mind taking that. That's pretty clean game plan, at least there. And then if it wants to push up higher, then we'll try and work with it. Real quick, just got to keep going through the chat here. We got to finish up in just a moment here, folks. Scott, last rookie question. We have watch lists, scanners, and you guys are great at pointing things not listed but moving, etc. in between. Speak of other trades you might be in but not obvious. How in the hell do we develop a routine to narrow to a trade approach? Failing on paper chasing or FOMO as a day trader beginning, BMNR was an anomaly. So with how you would phrase it, or a routine, process, a routine. Uh, we have two plays in this playbook. We're taking a breakout or taking a pullback on the initial test of support. When stock breaks resistance and runs, resistance initially, support. So if we're not taking that break of resistance, we are then taking, the potential test of support there at first. That's like basically what I'm dwindling down my routine towards. The key, though, is just making sure that we have the time to prepare, knowing where our levels are. So, Scott, I mean, hey, I appreciate what you're saying, how you're mentioning like we're great at pointing things out, et cetera, because like a lot of us, I'm sure, like, provide very similar feedback. I appreciate it, my friends. I do. But to speak to you as Josh the trader, guys, I miss out on 1,005 different trades all throughout the day. Even if I was in Florida right now and not in New York, if I had my main desktop, my main setup, I very well could have missed BMNR. So there are a list of stocks that I'm focused on, and there might be a trade Fausto calls out that looks phenomenal. It takes my attention away a little bit. So we are human beings. Just readjusting here. We are human beings. We are not the Watson IBM supercomputer. We're not a quantum supercomputer. We're going to miss things. That's where I'm pointing out, like, just, above all, Scott, to everyone. And I know, just, to others, especially those that feel like, they're personally a bit more impulsive themselves. Focus on stocks that have good liquidity. It's going to give you more time to set things up. It's going to give you more time to know your left hand from your right. That's the key. Genevieve saying, par is great. But I scored an eagle on a par 4 once. Ooh, look at you, Genevieve. There you go. Well, I'll tell you what. Hey, every one of us here can hit a hole-in-one in this stock market. Every one of us can very well have a game plan that comes to fruition, and one can say perhaps perfectly at times. But it's not what we always, should be striving for. Look what's moving right now. BMNR. Is there a case for this to try and move up higher later? Personally, I wouldn't expect it. But if the trend is up, and if this is re-breaking a resistance here at $25 and it's moving up a little bit here, then guess what I'm going to look to try and see flip into support? as we finish this workshop up right now. So, folks, all of us on social media, Facebook Live, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, etc. Rich, my friend, I'll see you inside our live trading room. Rich R on YouTube. He's one of our students. But Reginald and Dell and Rob N and just all of us on YouTube joining us this afternoon. I appreciate your participation and your attendance just joining us here. We do this live each and every Monday. I normally got a face for radio. No, I'm kidding. I do show webcam normally. I'm just on a laptop here, scrunched up in a bedroom right now. I'm visiting some family here. So I'll be back in my normal setup on Monday, and we'll do our full, traders talk with my face and my webcam there. But if you're joining us on YouTube, on social media, Instagram, X, etc., at Cyber Trading U is the main handle, especially on YouTube. That is. Be sure to hit the follow and subscribe button right down below. And then otherwise, we look forward to having you join us inside our live trading room in due time. You can go right down to the link scrolling down below on the bottom in blue, ctu.co/trial. That'll take you to a landing page just to sign up for our live trading room, just for a week-long membership. Just test our room out this week like Sharon is and Wayne. I see Clarence still with us and Seraphin, Jean-Marc. I see April. I see Jay. I got a lot of Florida people joining us here. A lot of my neighbors joining us here this afternoon inside our room. Sharon from Jupiter. We got Jay from St. John's. Who else we got here? I'm from Clearwater, St. Pete area there, my friends. So, we're all kind of in this together, right? Wayne from Rockledge, Florida. That's what it was. All right. Well, hey, if you wanted to join us inside our live trading room, just go right down to the link scrolling down below on the bottom, ctu.co/trial. Look forward to having you there. But hey, our next broadcast will be here at 2:30 p.m. Eastern, just rescanning the market at that point, building up a new watch list, taking us into the market close. I'll talk to you all then. Take care.